the invisible fabric of everyday life. The alarm clock rings. Gray light seeps through the crack in the curtain. Outside, the same dull sky as every other day. Inside, the same program gestures. The city hums in the background like an old machine, grinding out repetitions. The character in this story walks like all the others. Shoes, goals, notifications on the screen. But something inside him doesn't quite fit. It's like a faint, high-pitched buzz, almost imperceptible, that seems to come from reality itself. Sometimes he feels it. A sudden emptiness in the middle of the afternoon. A strange sensation when looking at the clock, as if time had skipped a second. Or a street he swears he's crossed before, but doesn't remember when. He asks himself, have I lived this before? And the question echoes, not as doubt, but as memory. Once he dreamed of a staircase spiraling in the dark, and the higher he climbed, the more he forgot who he was. When he woke up, there was a light scar on his leg, a mark he couldn't explain. These small cracks begin to add up. They call it déjà vu coincidence, a cognitive glitch. But what if they're fractures in the backdrop? What if the world, so solid, is just a backlit set, like the cardboard scenery of old theaters? The wind blows. The leaves move. People talk, but there's something missing in the sound of their voices. A slight artificiality, as if everything were part of a grand imitation game. He begins to notice subtle repetitions. The same woman crosses the street every day at the same minute with the same red purse. The same dog barks at the same window every morning. And the news, even with fresh tragedies, sounds like a broken record. Fear, chaos, distraction. It's a hypnotic ballet. But something inside him is too awake to dance. One night, as he turned off the lights, he felt it. Not a thought, but a deep sensation that someone was watching him from outside reality. Not a person, but a presence. As if his life were part of an experiment, a code running in real time. He remembers a phrase he heard somewhere, maybe in a dream. You believe you're awake, but you're still inside the dream. And ever since, nothing seems fixed. Colors sometimes vibrate too much. People's faces shift for a split second. And the mirror feels delayed. As if the reflection is deciding whether it truly wants to copy. He walks among concrete and screens, but feels something watching him from the inside. As if his consciousness isn't in his eyes, but behind them. As if reality, the one everyone swears is real, is just a layer, the thinnest of them all. He looks up at the sky, and he doesn't feel the sky. He looks down at the ground, and he doesn't feel the ground. He looks at himself, and realizes maybe he's never truly felt the real. Maybe everything he's lived until now is just the backdrop of a forgotten memory. Maybe reality is just a version, a temporary narrative, a superficial layer among countless others. But if this is only the visible layer, what lies behind it? What if reality is just one layer among many? The contract before flesh, before the first cry, before skin touched air, before the name, the body, the memory, there was a place where all was silence and light, a space without time, without form. The soul floated there, not as one floats in water, but as if it were the ocean itself. There were no questions, only knowing. And it was in that non-place that the choice was made. Because yes, life didn't begin at birth. It began with an agreement. He, the same character who now finds the world around him strange, was once more than flesh and thought. He was pure essence. And in that essence, something called out to him. An ancient calling. An impulse that wasn't desire, it was mission. In the vastness between lives, voices without mouths spoke to him. But not with words, with vibrations. And he understood. You must go down. Not as punishment, not as reward, but as learning. There were things that could only be learned by forgetting. Before him appeared a mirror of energy. And in that mirror, images. People he didn't yet know. Places he hadn't yet walked. Pains that hadn't yet torn his chest. And loves, deep, mysterious, that would make him remember who he was even without knowing why. These images danced in the ethereal field. And he chose. Yes, he chose. He chose the family, the country, the body, the challenge, even the name. He chose because he knew that by forgetting, he'd have the chance to remember again more deeply. He chose because the soul learns through contrast. But he was not alone. Around him, other consciousness. Some would be his allies, others his most painful mirrors, but all of them accomplices. Souls who made silent pacts with him. In this life I will hurt you, and you will forgive me. In this life I will lose myself, and you will find me. In this life I will die young, so you can awaken. A sacred theater with well-defined roles, and all of them signed, not with ink, but with vibration. He looked downward. The earth glowed like a floating hologram. He felt fear. He felt courage. He felt longing for something he hadn't even lived yet. And then he dove, fell like a ray of light compressed into flesh. The channel between worlds narrowed. The memories were erased. The voices went silent. Everything became density. First a cell, then an embryo. But that contract, it never ceased to exist. It pulses. It vibrates. It's there, hidden in dreams, in intuitions, in synchronicities. It whispers in moments of absolute silence. The soul knows, even if the mind doubts. And every time he feels like nothing makes sense, it's the contract trying to remind him why. If he's not alone in this story, if there are others playing with him, who are the true authors of this game? Who are the authors of this contract? The sentimental simulation. What does it mean to feel? To cry from longing? To tremble in fear? To love until your chest aches? What is that, if not proof that everything is real? But what if it's not? What if feelings are just part of the script? Sensations encoded to trigger reactions. Emotions programmed like lines in an invisible code. The one who doubts, who questions, begins to notice another layer. A layer where the heart isn't just a muscle, but an antenna. Where what is felt isn't always what is, but what was designed to be felt. Imagine a digital field. Lights pulsing in geometric patterns. And each pattern activates a different emotion. Fear, attachment, desire, sadness, euphoria. Everything can be triggered by frequencies. Everything can be induced. Since childhood, he was taught to feel certain things in certain ways. To cry over loss. To smile at victory. To fear the dark. To seek approval. To panic over love. But what would happen if he stopped? If he simply observed the emotion without reacting? Maybe it would dissolve. Maybe it was like a cloud, passing ownerless. And then he realizes, the feeling is real, but the meaning assigned to it is not. Love is not possession. Fear is not protection. Guilt is not redemption. They're all codes. Programs installed into his emotional field. What? Because feeling is what binds us. It's what anchors us. It's what makes the game feel real. When he grieves someone who left, the game becomes solid. When he desires someone who doesn't want him, the game gains weight. When he fears failure, the game creates walls. And so, every emotion is like a cable, connecting the soul to the game board. But now, he starts to hack. He realizes he can change what he feels simply by changing what he vibrates. That he can turn pain into compassion, fear into stillness, anger into clarity. That's when the simulation begins to glitch. Because when he stops reacting as expected, the code doesn't know what to do. The scenes lose power. The script weakens. It's as if his tears were made of liquid light. Codes falling from his face. Emotional lines fading the moment he sees they were never his. He still feels, but now he watches. Like someone watching a movie already knowing it's fiction. And the question echoes. If everything I feel can be reprogrammed, then who is really feeling? Is there a self behind the emotions? Is there a center that observes everything without getting lost in anything? The still point while the whole world shakes. The silent observer behind the eyes. The silent observer behind the eyes. He is lying down, eyes closed, breathing slow, but something inside him is lit. It's not the mind. The mind is quiet. It's not the body. The body is resting. It's another point, a silent center, a formless beacon. He realizes he is not the name he carries, not the face in the mirror, not the story he tells himself. There is something that has never changed. Even through all the changes, childhood is gone. Dreams have shattered. Loves have come and gone. But this something has remained, watching it all. It's a presence that doesn't speak, but understands. Doesn't judge, but observes. Doesn't interfere, but is. It's the same I that looked up at the sky at 5 years old, and the same one looking today, tired, trying to understand why the world feels so heavy. He begins to feel this observer, as if it's sitting behind his eyes, watching, without identifying. The body feels pain, but he is not the pain. The mind races with thoughts, but he is not the thoughts. The heart pounds, but he is not the fear. He is the background, the screen onto which everything is projected, but which is never confused with the film. It's strange, because for a moment, everything falls silent. Memories stop. Time dissolves. Identity evaporates. And what remains is pure being. A silence so deep, it's frightening, but also comforting. He realizes he is not separate from anything, and at the same time, he was never truly entangled with anything. This point of consciousness was never born. It cannot die. It cannot be harmed. It was there when the body was formed, and it will be there when the body dissolves. It's like a clean mirror, where all experiences pass, but none stick. And by touching this state, something opens. A kind of wisdom that comes not from books, nor from masters, but from remembering oneself. He doesn't need to understand everything. He only needs to feel that there is something greater, and that this something is himself. But then a question arises. If this eternal point exists within me, why does the world around me feel so dull? Why does everything seem so limited? And that's when the answer begins to appear. Not in words, but in a subtle image. A veil. A light, yet dense fabric. Suspended between worlds. Hiding the real, perfectly. The veil that dims the truth. Imagine living your entire life inside a theater, but never knowing you're on the stage. You act, feel, suffer, yet the backstage remains hidden. That's how he's beginning to see the world now, like a carefully assembled play. And at the center of it all, a veil. Thin, invisible, yet relentless. The veil isn't made of cloth. It's made of beliefs, of invisible rules, of ideas inherited before birth itself. You are this. You can't do that. Reality is what it is. Accept it. From an early age, he was taught not to question, to trust what the eyes show, to accept what others call reality. But what if the eyes lie? He begins to realize he sees very little, just a fraction of the light. Only certain colors, certain sounds, certain shapes. And what lies beyond that spectrum? Does it simply not exist? Or does the veil keep him from perceiving it? This veil is reinforced every day. By the news, by voices of authority, by tradition, by fear of the unknown. He sees now that his senses are like filters. They don't show what is. They show what's allowed to be seen. Just as light passes through stained glass and changes color, truth, when filtered through the veil, becomes distorted. No wonder children seem to see more. They speak to invisible friends, believe in secret worlds, feel what hasn't been said. But little by little, they learn not to trust themselves. They learn to deny the unseen, to doubt what they feel, and to worship only what they can touch. The veil is a master at erasing subtleties. It erases the premonition before the fall, erases the shiver when someone lies, erases the calling that echoes through silent nights. And the worst part? It makes everyone mock those who try to look beyond. It's all in your head. You're overthinking it. Come back to reality. But which reality? The one where everything is about consumption, rush, and distraction? Where people live to pay bills and die exhausted? Where appearances, status, and image are all that matter? He feels there's more. He's always felt it. And now, he's beginning to see the cracks. Tiny moments when the veil shifts. A strange look from someone on the subway. A phrase that arrives as an answer before the question. A déjà vu so strong it feels like a memory from another world. These openings reveal something. Not everything, but enough to raise suspicion. Maybe the real world isn't visible. Maybe what's true can't be proven. Maybe what matters isn't out there. But there is a way through, and he knows. Some have done it. Some have torn the veil. And they came back different, with eyes that no longer shine like before, with words that sound like prophecy, with silences that heal more than speeches. Who are they? And where were they when no one else could see them? But there are cracks in this veil, and some manage to pass through. Dreams, fragments from other worlds. When he sleeps, he becomes free. The body rests in matter, but the soul travels. It detaches from time, from logic, from the ground. In dreams, there are no laws. He can fly, breathe underwater, speak with those who have passed, be in two places at once. But why does it feel so real? Sometimes more real than waking life. He has woken up with the taste of the ocean in his mouth, though he's never been to that coastline. He's smelled jasmine in the middle of the night, with no flower in the room. He's wept after reuniting with someone, without remembering who they were. How do you explain that? Are dreams merely the product of a tired brain? Or are they fragments of other lives, other worlds, other versions of himself? He begins to realize that dreams are not inventions. They are portals, doors that open when the veil loosens, windows through which a piece of the true self escapes. Recurring dreams have followed him since childhood. A spiral staircase. A key hidden in a blue box. A train that never arrives. A field filled with golden lights dancing in the sky. It all seems symbolic, but the feeling is concrete. He wakes up with his heart racing, with tears in his eyes, with a longing he doesn't know how to name. And what if all of it is memory? Memory of a parallel existence, or of a life he's already lived, in another plane, another time. A life that vibrates in the same field at the same time as this one. Science now speaks of multiverses. Spirituality of subtle realms. Dreams may be the bridge. Crossing the veil requires silence. But sleep does it for us. When he sleeps, his soul returns. Not to rest, but to remember. In dreams, he receives messages, codes, signs, sometimes warnings, sometimes reunions. He's walked through cities made of crystal, looked into the eyes of beings who weren't human, but radiated more love than any familiar face. And the most astonishing thing, sometimes he wakes up with answers to questions he didn't even know he had asked. Dreams are a school, a quantum mirror, a theater where he rehearses choices, grasps lessons, and anticipates the unseen. But there's a detail. The more he remembers his dreams, the more waking life begins to feel like the dream. The outlines of the waking world lose solidity. Time grows strange. People feel distant. Reality becomes fragile. He starts to wonder, is this world the real one? Or am I dreaming a collective dream? And what if that's the truth? What if what we call reality is only one of the possible layers? The densest one, the most limited, the most asleep? Then dreams would be reminders, postcards sent from home. And every time he sleeps, it's as if a part of him whispers, "You are not this. You're just here. But you are not from here." The frequency that dissolves the illusion. Everything vibrates. Everything pulses. Everything sings, even in silence. The universe is not made of solid matter as we were taught. It is made of patterns, waves, invisible rhythms. And every being vibrates at a frequency. Every thought, every emotion, every intention. He begins to notice that his outer reality responds to his inner vibration. When he's in fear, the world feels hostile. When he vibrates in love, even time seems to slow down. When he becomes still, answers arrive before the questions. It's as if the simulation isn't fixed, but fluid, like a liquid mirror that reflects what he emits. The matrix responds to frequency. That truth changes everything. Because if reality is shaped by vibration, then he has power, not to control the world, but to resonate differently within it. And that's enough. He begins to experiment. He trades noise for breath, hurry for presence, judgment for listening. And something shifts, not outside, but within. At first, it's subtle. A lightness in the chest, a softer breeze on the face, a peace that didn't come from the outside. Then come the signs. Someone calls at the perfect moment. A book falls off the shelf with the exact phrase he needed. A stranger says something that sounds like a direct answer. Coincidence? Or vibrational consequence? He understands. The more he tunes into what is true, the more the world reconfigures itself. Like a radio station. He could spend a lifetime listening to static, or he can turn the dial and tune into a different frequency. The key is consciousness, and intention is the antenna. He begins to use meditation, not as an escape, but as a deep dive. He closes his eyes and journeys inward. There, at the core, he finds the pure field, the space where anything is possible, where the code of the simulation can be rewritten. There he visualizes, he feels, and vibrates what he wants to live, not as desperate desire, but as silent certainty. I am peace. I am light. I am free. And the simulation obeys, because it isn't real. It's reflection. But vigilance is required. Old patterns still try to return. Fear, doubt, attachment. But now he knows. These waves only hold power if he resonates with them. He learns to shift frequency like changing clothes. With ease, with intention, with love. And in this process, something approaches. A presence. A calling that comes from both inside and outside. A sensation that something, or someone, is about to emerge. The architect. The one who programmed everything. Who wrote the scripts. Who designed the scenery. And that architect is himself. The encounter with the inner architect. He thought he was searching for God, or for truth, or for a way out of the matrix. But what he found was himself, not the usual self, not the identity that signs documents, pays bills, replies to messages, but another I. Silent, ancient, an architect. He sees this for the first time in a deep meditation. Time disappears. The body dissolves. And before him, a room made of living light. Walls that breathe. Codes dancing like golden dust. At the center, a presence. It has no face, but it has form. It doesn't speak, but it transmits. He understands everything without hearing a word. That presence is him, the true self, the origin, the author of the story. The simulation wasn't imposed. It was written with purpose, with precision, with love. Every challenge, every loss, every pain, all part of a greater curve. A design that only now reveals its beauty, like embroidery that, from the underside, looks like chaos, but seen from above, is sacred. He feels shame for having judged his own story, for having cursed the path, for having forgotten who he was. But the architect does not judge. He welcomes. He shows pages, scenes he himself wrote before birth, soul packs, necessary detours, lessons hidden within the suffering. Nothing was in vain. Not that loss, not that trauma, not that silence that once consumed him from within. Everything was chosen. And now, faced with this revelation, he weeps, but not out of sorrow. He cries in recognition, like someone reuniting with an old friend they never stopped loving. You designed me. You abandoned me. But you also waited for me. It's an internal embrace, without arms, without form, but with the warmth of 1,000 suns. He is not a victim, not a prisoner, not a character. He is the screenwriter. He forgot in order to remember, slept in order to awaken, descended in order to rise. And now, with this reunion, the game changes. Because when the creator awakens within the creation, the rules dissolve. There is no more separation between inside and outside, between heaven and earth, between soul and world. Everything pulses to the same rhythm, but then something begins to crack. The ground trembles. The scenery fades. The forms dissolve like smoke. He realizes the world he once knew is collapsing, not as punishment, but as release. Because when the architect awakens, the illusion cannot hold. When the world cracks and the soul sees, everything begins to crack, but not with violence, with truth. The walls of reality, once so solid, now tremble like thin veils in the wind. The structures that held up fear collapse. The certainties, once unquestionable, melt like wax under the light of the soul. He walks down the same street as always, but he sees differently. People keep rushing, arguing, waiting for the light to change. But he sees through. The faces are masked, the conversations automated, the eyes empty. And then he understands. No one is to blame. Everyone is asleep, trapped in the same heavy dream. But he has awakened. It's as if the whole world is performing a play. And suddenly he no longer belongs in the cast. He feels no more anger, no urgency, no hunger to prove anything. He feels light, as if an ancient, millennial-old weight had slid off his back. As if something within him whispered, "It's over. The pretending is over. The search out there is over. The fear of being is over. Now, everything is vision." He looks at a tree and sees vibration. Looks at a stranger and feels the soul behind the gaze. Touches his own skin and realizes it's just clothing. And then it happens. The world, that dense, concrete, programmed world, collapses. Not through destruction, but through illumination. It's as if the pixels of reality stop rendering. As if life begins to deprogram, scene by scene. The first to vanish is routine. He no longer feels the need to repeat the same gestures. The days no longer have beginnings or ends. Only presence. Only now. Words lose meaning. Because silence speaks louder. Because a gaze contains everything. And finally, the self. The self that fought. That feared. That needed to prove its worth. That one disappears. And what remains is the soul. Pure, nameless, pastless, free of urgency. The soul that sees everything with tenderness. Even the pain it lived. Even the mistakes it made. Because now it knows. Nothing was failure. Everything was design. A script to lead him here. The world cracks. But not to destroy him. To free him. Because behind the scene, there is space. There is light. There is truth. And in that space, he breathes as he never has before. I am. That's all. And that is enough. But then comes the final question. The quietest one. The deepest. The one that echoes from soul to cosmos. If nothing I lived was real, then what is? What has always been, even when everything else was a lie? The world has ended, but what is real after all? The real was never outside. The scenery vanished. The voices fell silent. The names were left behind. Now, there is only presence. There is no more searching, because everything he was looking for was never outside. The real, that which cannot be touched, explained, or compared, was always within. He remembers not with the mind, but with the soul. He remembers the silence before words, the light before form. He remembers who he was, before any story began. The Real is the still point that observed everything. It's the deep sigh that escapes for no reason. It's the moment of peace that arises in the middle of chaos, uninvited. It's what pulses when all the roles fall away. It's what shines when everything goes dark. He realizes he never needed to attain the real, only to stop running from it. Because every time he looked outward in desperation, it was his own reflection calling him home. Every pain was an invitation. Every collapse, a return. Every fall, a realignment. Now, he no longer seeks answers. He seeks silence. He no longer wants to win. He just wants to be. He doesn't need to prove. or explain, or convince, because the real is simple. It's what remains when everything false disappears. And what remains is love. But not the love of movies, contracts, or promises. It's the love that holds everything together, the one that vibrates in every atom, that connects all things, that created him, and that he is. This love is never born. It never dies. It demands nothing. It simply is. And now he feels it, not as an emotion, but as home. The Real is home. It is shelter. It is the place to which all things return. He breathes, and in that breath there is eternity, a cycle that never began and never ends, because he didn't come here to awaken in the world. He came to awaken from the world, and now he sees everything with new eyes, eyes that do not judge, eyes that know. He can walk again among people, places, and sounds, but something has changed forever. The illusion may continue, but he is no longer bound by it. The game may go on, but he plays awake. He understands that nothing he lived was real, but everything he felt led him to what is, and that is enough. If nothing you've lived is real, maybe you've come this far to remember what is, what vibrates in silence inside you, what does not die, does not change, does not lie. You did not come here to awaken in the world. You came to awaken from the world.